And our reporter, Stefan Simons, joins us now from Chicago. Good to see you, Stefan. So some big speeches there. We know that Barack Obama, the former US president, will be addressing the convention later. And his endorsement of Kamala Harris was really important for her, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course. In presidential elections here in America, it is every endorsement counts. Some count a little more, have a little bit more oomph, and than others. This is definitely this is the big league. So yes, those endorsements and the ones which will come along this week, during the course of this week or until Thursday, until the DNC is over, they will count. They will count within the Democratic Party. They will count for getting or enabling Kamala Harris to grab more voters on the edges, the independent voters, especially female voters in the suburbs. There is where she already made some strides, where the Democratic Party was under Joe Biden with Joe Biden as a candidate in a slump. This has significantly changed, and those endorsements, they help.
So tell us a little bit more about where the race is at right now, because as you say, since Kamala Harris has come on the scene, there has been a shift in the polls. What are the polls saying now about how close Harris and Trump are?
Of course, yeah, there's two kinds of polls. So there's a national poll, and we kind of have to neglect this a little bit because they don't really compare to the state polls. What is going on in the states, for example, in the battleground states, they don't matter that much, those national polls. But she has, for the first time, the Democrats have, Kamala Harris has, a slight lead over Donald Trump in the national polling. Now, let's talk about states and their battleground states, and there's where the cheese is, where it's really important. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona. Pennsylvania, for example, Georgia, for example, she has turned it a little bit around there. Joe Biden was in a dead heat at the time he was still the candidate with Donald Trump. That has changed. Now Kamala Harris has picked up more momentum. So you see, there is where polling is more interesting for politics nerds and for everybody who's watching this, really where this race is going. So Kamala Harris is on a good track. She has the momentum in the states, in the battleground states, and that is key for anything going forward from here.
DW's Stefan Simons reporting from Chicago. Stefan, thank you so much.
For more on Biden and the DNC, let's check in with David Weigel. He covers politics for the news website Semafor. David, good to see you. Let's start with Joe Biden. This was supposed to be his convention. Now he was basically the opening act. How difficult is all of this for him?
He has talked a little bit about, we don't know how blunt he has been in his comments. He did refer to the decision in a few remarks that weren't in the prepared speech. I mean, he talked about how he is too old to run for president again. His family talked about the selflessness of the decision. And the whole apparatus around him has turned into an effort to elect Kamala Harris and make the Biden legacy one of being the president who took the torch from Barack Obama and passed it to the first female president. That would be a powerful legacy. There are not many one-term presidents who have something like that in their record. You also saw throughout the first night, I think you'll see this other points of the week, an argument by Democrats that this is the most significant president, one-term president in American history, almost overpraising him, but it's their convention. They're allowed to do that. And this was part of the effort to get him out, too, to say, you have done enough in 4 years to have a place in history. You will lose that place in history if you run and lose. We think you're going to lose.
Did he seem to you like someone ready and willing to pass the torch, though?
Well, I'm from Delaware. He was my senator when I was growing up. I think he's more willing last night than he was a month ago. It took a long time to pry him off this and get the Biden advisors who were telling him that he's had a path to victory out, I wouldn't say out of the room, get them to show him the data that showed he couldn't win. And so I do think from the way he talked about it, he was self-rationalizing the decision. No, he wasn't completely ready to go. And if you know politicians cover politicians, even ones who lose landslide elections, think of decisions they could have made that would reverse it. Biden knows that had he pulled himself together for the first debate, there would have been a different conversation. The whole campaign plan was to do well enough in the June debate that the conversation about his age would diminish, would disappear. People would look at him the way they looked at him in 2020, and he blew it. He had a bad enough debate that ended his campaign. So he's very aware of that. This is his umpteenth campaign, but he has moved to a new stance of getting behind the scenes and also trying to achieve things with less of a media spotlight that would help Vice President Harris, help him and help her. The hostage negotiations you saw right after he dropped out of the race is the first example.
Yeah, there was a huge crowd in Chicago, but I want to talk about one person in particular, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She stood in the first row chanting, "We love Joe. Thank you, Joe." She posted it on X even. She was reportedly instrumental in pushing Biden to withdraw. Where does their relationship stand?
It's tense, but what you hear from Democrats is to be direct, they don't care. I mean, Joe Biden is retiring. Nancy Pelosi is in for this term. She's going to run again, but she's in her mid-80s. And this is probably also her, I think, a more dignified final act, but probably her final act, too. You also hear from Democrats this conversation about the respect shown to Joe Biden or whether he was forced out of the race. They do not mind when Donald Trump is talking about that and not talking about anything that they think might hurt Vice President Harris. She's been in the race for nearly a month, and the Trump campaign has not found very effective lines of attack. I think some that were promising, some that they're putting money behind. If you look at their advertising, it's often about immigration, crime, the issue she's weakest on. It's just a parade of people who were let out of prison and committed crimes they blame Harris for. But when they talk about this race, they will carp about Biden being disrespected, how it was a coup. And what Democrats think, and I think this is backed up when I've been out on the trail recently, is that voters don't care. They really didn't like the idea of Joe Biden running again.
Yeah.
When Nikki Haley was running for president against Trump and faded pretty quickly, she made this argument that whichever party was the first to dump its 80 octogenarian nominee would win the election. And she was being wry when she said that. But that is what I heard from a lot of people. They did not want a Biden-Trump rematch. And they're not tied up in knots thinking, who do I blame for Biden not being on the ballot? They're happy this happened. It is a lottery victory for a lot of voters that they don't have to think about Joe Biden anymore, even if they voted for him last time.
That was David Weigel of Semafor. Great speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.